Hello, this is Black Country Blokes chewing the fat.
Listen, listen.
I've been hearing a lot lately about men don't talk, but in my experience, men do talk, just people aren't listening. So it's going to be me and a group of blokes discussing our struggles and victories through life. Warning, there may be some bad language, so apologies to all the moms, especially my own. Let's get going.
Listen, listen.
I've been this is the Black Country Bloke chewing the fat. Here with me, Kev Dillon, Lee Cadman, and we're joined today by Jamie Roberts. Now, Jamie Roberts was a Paralympian in many events, but I'm going to let him tell you all about that. So, Jamie, thank you, brother, for coming on.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Kevin.
And would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself and how, once again, your disability, then how you had the courage to go for the Paralympics?
As you said, Kevin, I'm a two-time Paralympian, transformational coach, TEDx speaker. My upbringing is slightly different to most Paralympians. My parents were both in the forces. So I think from an opportunity standpoint, from a sports perspective, I probably had everything going. It wasn't as straightforward. I started out in mainstream sport, and I had one coach when I was 15 years old say, "What's your thoughts on doing disability sport?" I was taken aback by the comment. I didn't know what to say at the time. Probably very rebellious. I probably said, "Well, why would I want to do something like that?" Because we're talking about 20 years ago. Paralympic sport was not viewed in the same way as the Olympics. So my perception was probably very similar. It's like, well, it at best was maybe getting 2 hours of highlights for a 2 week discipline, whereas the Olympics was every single day. So I wanted to be an elite sportsman, and I went away and discussed it with my family. And long story short, made the British development team for British swimming within the year to 18 months. So it was a pretty rapid rise in disability sport. And then it went from strength to strength. I seemed to be in the right place. Went to university because of sport. And I think I thrived in that environment in South Wales, and made my first Paralympics in Beijing 13 years ago. And I got a taste for it, and I wanted more. So when opportunities came knocking, and ultimately I had to change sports twice, it was a no-brainer. I had to probably ask a second opinion, but it was like, well, I'm enjoying life. I'm liking this. And when London came about, it was yes, please. I know family wanted me to go in a different direction. I'd like to think, what would be now 9 years on, I made the right decision. Sometimes I do question what if I'd have gone down the route of going into the media with Channel 4, where am I to be? But I think talking to other athletes that didn't get the opportunity to compete, I think I made the right decision for me.
Because as you said about Channel 4, two things I want to come back to then, because I remember before 2012, it was the Olympics and the other thing at the end. But after 2012, what Channel 4 and the last leg did, they made a massive thing of the Paralympics. And that's why it is how it is today, isn't it? It's in the adverts and it's in full coverage, or mostly full coverage of all the different events.
I think it was. I think it's also with it coming home, so to speak. With it being us hosting the first games in 1948, it was probably an opportunity for the Paralympics to grasp it with both hands, and to probably put it as a benchmark. I don't think Rio has lived up to that. Tokyo, I think, probably would have if it wasn't for the pandemic. Because talking to people, it sounds like in terms of accessibility and things like that. The Japanese are like light years ahead of pretty much the world. So it would have been quite interesting, even as a spectator, to have actually been able to witness it and experience it. It'd be nice to talk to the athletes when they come home, British alike and alike, to kind of say what was the experience like. Okay, could tell a little bit compared to Rio or games in the past, but I would echo what you said, Kevin, in terms of it kind of normalized it. Okay, you had I can't think of the presenters, Adam and
Alex Brooker.
Alex Brooker being disabled. Okay, you call the token ginger, but
Alex
it kind of normalized disabilities. It was if it was okay for me to laugh about it, or for those two to laugh about it, it's okay for Lee and yourself to be able to come into the conversation and joke about. If I'm comfortable with making a mockery of my disability, it's okay for you to do it. And I think it's gone from strength to strength. Okay, most of the Paralympians are household names. Now they, in their own right, I think they probably deserved it anyway. And I think it's opened up the conversation for in the mainstream to kind of go, okay, it's not these people aren't marginalized, they're not on the periphery. I think there's still some way to go within probably the general populace, because there's some disabilities that are accepted and others that are not. I probably fall in one of the disabilities that accept it, because if I was just standing still and was wearing trousers, you wouldn't know any different. I look able-bodied. There's probably still some way to go to recognise what I would describe as probably the epitome of the Paralympics. You know, the severely disabled among us, because there was always talk of the two disciplines merging, of the Olympics and the Paralympics. Well, if that was to ever happen, I don't think it will do nowadays, because I think they stand alone equally and as strong as they have been, and they're probably in their own right they're strong separately. But if they were ever to do that, the ones that would be discarded would be the more severely handicapped. If I was to use it like in a negative term, I would be fine, because I'm socially acceptable. It's not very difficult to explain what's wrong with me. Thus, okay, we can accept it. And I think this is where probably the Paralympics finds itself now, is in kind of that in between us. Okay, are we going to go for the best of the best, or we're going to stick to our principles? So I think it's kind of in a catch-22 at the moment.
Could you describe what your disability is, please?
I'm gonna do my best, because it's difficult to verbally describe it. I'm missing my femur bones at the top portion of my leg, so my thigh. I've got a small tibia and fibula, which would be the bottom portion of my leg, and that's attached to my hip. So I use amputation because it's easier to be able to interpret and visualize, because thus everybody's seen a prosthetic limb now. Everybody's seen an amputation because of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, and I guess for me it's easy to kind of go, this is what it is. If you've got any further questions, obviously go ahead. As opposed to kind of describing it, you've got to be very in tuned with a visual, being able to visualize. Okay, this is what I'm looking at, even though I can't see it.
Can I just go back to, sorry Kev, can I just go back to something you mentioned there about kind of accepted disabilities? So me and Kev have been talking quite a lot about our podcast and obviously planning for the future, and Kev is obviously, he's got his disability, and then I've got a child who's severely disabled. So we're looking to actually, we talk more about disability, or as much about disability as mental health. And I think what you said there about accepted people with disability is right, because I look at my daughter and say she's severely disabled, she's in a wheelchair, and the amount of people, or when I do interviews, that basically happen, oh, it's a really hard life, isn't it? It's really hard, it's hard for her. And I'm like, and it drives me mad because I want to show the positive side of it. Because you know what, there is days it is hard, but the positive outweighs it by far. And I think as media, we kind of show, if my daughter was to get on telly, it's always kind of the sob story, or they're trying to raise money because they can't. It's always that sob side of it, instead of actually highlighting the positive of having a disabled daughter. So I think that's really important to put across there, that it all needs to be accepted. But I
And what
also understand it has to start with people like yourself who is not obviously disabled. If you start breaking down the barriers for us, then hopefully we can come through behind you.
But Lee, could I jump in there? Because once you said like, so I'm registered being blind, I'm completely blind in my left eye, and I've got less than 10% in my right eye. But I'm high functioning. I run a boxing club. People don't know I'm visually impaired unless I mention it, because I learned from a young age how to get through life. So, like, if you see a guy with a blind cane or a dog, you can see he's blind straight away. But people like me might think I'm ignorant because I don't wave if I see them, or might accidentally bump into stuff. But I'm not obviously disabled like you. If you're wearing trousers, people wouldn't know you've got a poorly leg. Jamie.
Yeah, I think that's it's probably goes a step further than that, because it comes to the acceptance is massive, because you could put that to blanket that statement to the whole of society. I would probably agree that during the first lockdown, people were embracing of change, and willing to confront their demons. I think as me as a professional, as a coach, I knew that wouldn't last, because that's uncomfortable. It's challenging. I'd probably echo what you say, Lee. I don't hear that very often, in terms of it must be hard for you. It's like, well, I don't know any different. I was born like this. It's yes. I've come to realize and accept. Well, if I brush it off, and from a humility standpoint, kind of say it's no big deal. It is a big deal, because the fortitude that it takes to not loathe or self pity yourself with a disability is pretty. You got to be a strong individual, because the bad days probably we call the good, but when you have a bad day, you could feel pretty down. Be it, I don't know, you've got a pressure sore, or somebody in a wheelchair, so you can't use your chair. Same with if you're an amputee, you got a blister or a sore, can't wear your prosthetics. So you're I'm not saying you're incapable of doing easy tasks, but you're on the back foot, and no pun intended, versus probably everybody in society that has quote unquote got nothing wrong with them. But in terms of, from the mental health perspective, it can weigh you down. I spoke to one of my clients, I think it was in the second lockdown, and he felt quite low in terms of, well, I can't go to the toilet without disturbing my wife. It's like, well, okay, you're not feeling the prosthetic at the moment. However, let me give you a different perspective on, okay, we as those in the community of disability have an advantage, wheelchair users as well. We are able to displace or add the disability at our will. So the positive I was trying to reinforce was, you're gonna have your bad days. That was one of them. It's unfortunate that you don't want to disturb your wife, thus the prosthetic is a hindrance and a nuisance. I get that, because there are days, they're few and far between, but I do get days like that. That's why I can probably relate to my clients who've got same impairments. They know full well that my bad days equal theirs, but I probably have a different perspective on life at times. But what I wanted to give him is, well, you're a little bit like a transformer. It's a positive. You add it, it enables you to do things that other people may take for granted. However, if you're having a bad day, you can get rid of it. other disabilities don't have that luxury. So be it cerebral palsy, people with severe disability can't kind of go, okay, I'm having a bad day, let me put it to one side and I can go about my day. For me, it would be, okay, I can't walk, I can still use my crutches, or I can choose to look at it and kind of say, well, okay, today is this the best I can do? Okay, that's all right. And I don't wear a leg, I don't use the crutches, and I just take on board, from a mental perspective. It's more a skill set that you see in mental health as, okay, you're not 100% today, you might be at 50. That's okay. It's you're taught to embrace that side of things. That's the best you can do today. Okay, it takes a lot to be able to look at it in a positive way, because if you're in a dark place, 50% is not 100%, thus it's bad. But this probably comes back to it as human beings. It's like, well, we don't glorify when things are going well. I'm happy, I feel good. Okay, that's all right. When the opposite's true, oh, I feel crap, I feel sad, I feel bad. Let me analyze that under a microscope and kind of go, wow, why is this affecting me? I'm one of those type of people. I analyze things very, very deeply sometimes. I think through my own troubles with mental health, I've come to realize that I was probably told to, well, don't analyze it so much. I went to the extreme of I don't analyze it at all, because then I don't try and look at it as you've got the likes of meditation apps looking at good, bad, and indifferent. So I don't want to. Why do I need to analyze indifferent? If I don't feel anything to whatever the situation was, why am I reading into it? It's that's, for me, is how I would look at it, because good, okay, that's wonderful. It's a wonderful day. It's sunny outside. It's sunny inside. If it's dark and gloomy, hey, that's life. We live in that part of the world, so it's kind of the normality. And if it's somewhere in between, I try not to analyze it too much anymore. It's like, well, if I don't feel anything towards the subject, hey, oh well, that's good. If I have no ill feelings either way, that it's depend on what it is. But if it's nothing that needs serious thought about it, hey, oh well, we'll keep going. We'll keep going forward.
I think that is life. You've got to realise some days there's being depressed and there's being down, isn't there? Sometimes you just wake up down, but down is different to depressed. Like nerves are different to anxiety. And we've got to remember in life, we are going to feel happy and we are going to feel sad. Like flowers, they need sunshine and rain. Or to make a rainbow, like with the NHS, we need the sunshine, we need the rain. That's life. But I think when you have bouts of depression, which I know me and Lee have, and know that you have, that's when it's horrible, isn't it? That's when you are in that dark room and it's very difficult to get out.
Well, I think because, as I'm not going to generalize, but males are not okay with their feelings. This is where the problem starts, because they're not able to identify things of depression and kind of going down that dark hole. Because, okay, I'm going to brush it off as, okay, I don't want to tell a complete stranger, I don't want to tell my family that I've got a weakness. It's not really a weakness, but the point I'm making is, if you kind of say, okay, I'm okay, and you keep telling yourself that, you virtually, if I was choosing from a positive perspective, you fake it till you make it. It's not all right. So why are you lying to yourself, first and foremost? And why are you lying to other people? And for me, as an adult, it's come to realize that, because I was brought up more by my mother, my aunt, and my grandmother. So matriarchal society. As a child, I would be okay with my feelings. It'd be okay to cry. It's okay to be angry. It's okay to be happy. And as I've got older and been societally influenced, Now let's be guarded of what could be perceived as a weakness and be used against me. And ultimately, sport is pretty much like that. It's you're gonna go and put on a suit of armor and go to war. Okay, it's not physically going to fight, but mentally, you are trying to outdo an opponent. You are trying to find any ounce of weakness to be able to utilize. So be it, I've had to rebuild myself back up to kind of go, okay, there's skill sets I can learn from sport. There's also skill sets of vulnerability that I had as a preteen and adolescent that I've lost. And I think that's an essence that I brought into my coaching early doors was, okay, you can't relate to me because of my sporting excellence, because you're putting me on a pedestal, rightly or wrongly, for whatever reason that is. You're creating a divide that doesn't exist. The only relatable factor is the disability. Okay, let me get rid of this divide and not create vulnerability, but to kind of showcase I do have flaws, I do have weaknesses. I'm okay with talking about it, and the amount of people that come and speak to me, be it via Zoom, via chats, messenger, emails, and kind of go, well, you're an inspiration and motivation. It's like, well, okay, that's all well and good that I'm a figurehead to kind of give you hope, but you also need to find that yourself. You need to be willing to embrace some sort of vulnerability, but it doesn't matter if it's minute or major. It's, for me, it was probably easy because from my first bout of, was it anxiety or was it depression? I know it was to do with mental, I can't remember. But I wanted to write about it because then I can at least go back, and that's one bonus of Facebook, is kind of like a diary, to kind of showcase to me, it's like progress. Okay, this time 2-3 years ago you were having this. Look how far you've come. And okay, I can showcase it to a new audience who maybe have not seen it. It's like, well, I've had this. Here's a problem. Here's a resolution. Here's a solution. And this is what I did. I'm not saying it's going to work for you, but these are steps that you can implement, and you're going to see change. It's not going to happen overnight. It probably took about 3 to 6 months to see change. And okay, it's reared its ugly head again for a pandemic. I know over the last 18 months that I've done the work that I stopped doing it. So I can kind of go, okay, you thought 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, everything's rosy, everything's back to normality, but you stopped doing the work. And anytime you stop doing the work is when atrophy comes. So if we were to use, from a physical standpoint, it's easy to see. You've got weaker. Okay, you've took your foot off the accelerator. But I think when it comes to mental health and the brain, people can't see it. It's like, well, I can't grasp it. I think as a science, we still don't know a lot about the brain, so it's got a long way to come. So be like, how much is actually in tap that you don't utilize, as the three of us have conversating just now.
But it's like, as you just said, like with the physical, oh, I've put on a bit of weight, you can see the fat on your belly, or I've twinged my back, I should go and see a physiotherapist. But often we wait to very extremes, like to go and see a counsellor, an NLP, hypnotherapist, whatever it is. We almost have to be on the verge of being completely broken before we go and get the help.
Well, that probably comes back to, we talk about, like, from a history perspective, Spartans, very strong. Just if we look at I think from a history perspective, or the film 300, the weakest discarded and chucked off the mountainside. So I think if we portray that kind of machismo in films, people are going to go, well, okay, I need to be like that. I need to have a 6-pack. I need to be strong. But what I would challenge anybody listening to that is like, well, you need to be strong for your family. You need to be strong for your children. You need to set them a good example. Kevin, you talked about obviously having a bit of fat around the stomach.
I've got loads now.
I spoke to somebody a couple of weeks ago, and they would skip breakfast, but they would make their children eat breakfast, and the kids would kind of go, "Well, you're making me eat breakfast. Why aren't you?" And because I'd worked in education for a little bit, I've seen kids going to secondary school eating chocolate, drinking Monster, having Lucozade for breakfast. It's like, for me, towards the end of my contract, I would challenge it. Whereas in the beginning, I came to accept it because, like, well, I'm coming from an industry that's all about health. Who is it for me to preach to somebody else how to live their life? Whereas that derailed me psychologically, physically, because of the pressures of that environment. It's very toxic, so it kind of unravels you and brings you down. And I was pretty much exercising like a bare minimum. I was making the wrong choices when it came to eating, and I was just pretty much eating to survive that environment. And I think once I hit rock bottom, as you said, Kevin, I was not aware of spiraling. I was probably going down slowly over the years. Once I'd retired from sport, and I didn't see it. So I think my body was giving me warning signs of, okay, this is not all right. Okay, let's give you something that will really make you alert. I had a massive panic attack at work, and I thought I was having a heart attack or a stroke.
Yeah.
But my body kind of got, well, okay, when it comes to your health, you're going to listen. And what I heard from colleagues of that experience that day, it horrified me. It's like your eyes were rolling back in your head. It's like, well, I don't remember doing that. Your head kind of hit the desk. It's like, no, I'm sure I had control of my head. I know I put my head into my hands, and it was like my head was going to explode. And I was asked, "Do you want an ambulance?" Like, yes, because I've never felt like this ever. It's helped because I know
You do think you're going to die, don't you, when you have one?
And it's obviously made it apparent when I've had panic attacks, not as major as that, but it kind of go, okay, you're having a panic attack now. You know what it is. You're not gonna die. You're not having a heart attack or stroke. I think the only time that it was come close to it was during the first lockdown back in March. I wasn't sleeping very well because I was kind of spiraling then, just because of the media, very, very negative. And I was probably sleeping like 3 hours a night for, I think it ended up being like a month. So people were like, well, how are you able? And I was turning up to work every single day. And to this day, I still don't know how. 3 hours sleep, just about able to function. And I was talking to out of hours back then, and gave them my symptoms, like tight chest and pain in the back. It's like, well, we think you should go to the hospital. That's the last place I wanted to go at that time, was hospital. It's like, well, you're telling to everybody in the British public that COVID's in hospital. Why would I want to go there? It doesn't make no sense. I know. I know, probably looking back on reflection, of there was a deadly silence my end when he said, "Oh, you need to go to the hospital." It's like, I don't particularly want to go there. I know now, 18 months on, why, because they wanted to check that I hadn't had a stroke or I hadn't had a heart attack, because I've got a history of it in my family. So, of everything come back clear, and I think within 6 hours I was out. So I was set fairly there and present, because it's like, well, I want all the tests to come back negative. I was asking questions of the stats and things like that. But what probably alarmed me most is when the doctor came around, like, the question you get for mental health: are you likely to hurt yourself or somebody else? I answered yes. but I didn't think of the gravity, actual consequences of that answer. I just answered it like you would do, as okay, you've asked me a question. I think probably deep down it was me reaching out for help. It's like, well, if I make it worse than it is, I don't think I would, but it was getting to that point that I might have done. So I probably was aware that, okay, you're losing control. Just come out and say, and obviously I was psych evaluated. And I was diagnosed depressed, and then had put on some medication. But for me, I think once I got the stigma to one side, and kind of said, okay, well, the medication this time round is going to be the help. Last time you were able to do it for counselling and support, that wasn't there. So I did brush it off the first time when it was given. Like, well, I don't want medicine. I want to do it holistically, because medicine and all of its, how would I describe it? Poo-poos to a certain extent, as well. If you take medication, you're going to get side effects, yada yada yada. You're going to have all things that go wrong. But mine's quite low in terms of dosage, more for the sleep. It helped, and then slowly but surely, I'm not saying I got better. I improved. I did the work. I looked at tools that was able to implement. Sometimes probably rightly or wrongly, I tried to implement multiple, which they tell you not to do, because it's like, well, this one didn't work today. Let me use another one, and be able, okay, on the worst days, none of them will work at all. But I think gradually, I just utilize something that worked for me, talking about it, and ultimately, I'm aware when things don't go well. It would be, okay, if I read too much bad media, okay, that makes me feel a bit down. Okay, stop it. That's enough. Or give myself a limit or a cap. Okay, you can read 5-10 comments. That's it. You're starting to go downhill. That's enough.
I think you mentioned something important there. We speak quite often about the stigma surrounding mental health, but there's also, you're right. There's also such a big stigma about people who take medication for the mental health, and it's as crazy as the stigma about mental health, because ultimately, if you've hurt your leg, broke your leg, you're going to take painkillers, and there doesn't seem to be any qualms with anyone doing that at all. But when it comes to your mental health and you're taking something to help you there, there's definitely a stigma around doing that. And I'm kind of like you. I don't take tablets anyway, to be quite honest. I never really have. So I tend to prefer to go down the route of holistic. But that doesn't mean it's going to work for everyone doing that. Some people need that medication to get them enough on track to be able to go down that route.
Well, I think because of its, the cousins of, the opiates and things like that. I think that's probably why the stigma comes in, because it's like, well, okay, are you trying to? And I'm not going to generalize too much with this statement. Are you trying to paint over the cracks with the problems, which some people will do? Of, okay, I'll take the medication, then I don't thus have to do the work, which I don't think will ever work. Some people might get away with it. I did at times in the early days, because, oh, let me take the medication, it'll take some of the load off, and then it wasn't really, it was getting me so far, and it would be through talking with one of the OTs at my general practice, and kind of go, well, you need to do the work, because at the end of the day, that's what's gonna serve you. The medication is only gonna serve you so much, and you need to be able to have these, I won't say coping skills, it's not really the right thing for it. These resources at your disposal to be able to, if you have any bouts of anxiety, any bouts of depression, or panic attacks, you're able to deal with it yourself. You're not reliant on other people or reliant on a drug. But I think you mentioned it at a good point, Lee, because the stigma towards the medication, rightly or wrongly, like you said, it's some things are going to work better for other people than not. Okay, you're going to blanket statement and say, well, some people are going to work with medication, some people are going to work holistically. It's what's going to work best for you as the individual. Okay, I was, through my fault, really, I was asking every man and his dog, what should I be doing with my mental health, which is barbaric, because everybody's going to have their opinion on you should do this, you should do that, you should do this, and I was pulling myself in every which direction, and I think the best support I got was my family was pretty brutal. It's like, well, I think my aunt said, I don't care what you want. You need to do what's best for your mother. Because it was she has to live with it to a certain extent during the lockdowns. I wasn't very happy at the time, but I think she was right. It was tough love. It's like, you need to suck it up and take it. I think my mum did it a different way, as I'm not going to tell you to take the medication. You're gonna decide whether or not you take it, and there's nobody to blame. I obviously took it because the first day was amazing. I had 9 hours sleep. I thought it's like, oh, this is a wonderful drug. The next couple of days weren't great after that, but in terms of when I did talk about it, and they kind of said, well, if you get 4 hours sleep, 5 hours sleep a night, hey, that's okay. It probably comes back to this myth of we must have 8 hours sleep. So I love my sleep, so I probably get more than that. But when you kind of see that you're only getting half of that, it's like, well, is it something that's still wrong, and things like that. But what I would probably say to people is like, you've got to find what's going to suit you best. It could be going down the route of the medication. It could be doing NLP. It could be counseling. It could be there's so many resources out there now. It's finding what works for me. I've obviously done a combination of the two, because I know the things both work. I've done guided meditation, stopped doing it. I've obviously gone down a different route of what I used to do with sport, with music. So I'll give people now as a coach. I won't tell them what to do, because ultimately, when it comes to mental health, I'm not a counsellor. I'm not somebody within that health profession, so I can't give you medical advice, because that would be unjust and not acceptable. And I wouldn't want to steer somebody down the route of, oh, you should do this XYZ, when I don't know, they could be bipolar or something like that, and they should be potentially looking at the medication and seeking help from the doctor. But if it's to do more with like psychology, it would be, okay, why don't you try this? Or I've got one client, they used to do a lot with their son before they die. It's like, well, you need to try and see if you can implement it. And I can appreciate that it's going to be challenging, because you've got bereavement of that's something you used to do together. But it's helpful. Be it, try 5 minutes. How do you react to that song? If it's positive, that's good. It's progress. And then go from there.
I think you're right in terms of we do, again, on the podcast and our radio, we don't say go and do this, because we're not medical professionals. But what we can do is tell them our experiences and what helped us, and then hopefully they will try those things and try other things to find what will help their own mental health. So you're right. Don't go in there being a doctor, but definitely tell people your experiences and what helped you.
Well, I think it comes back to my point earlier, Lee, of vulnerability. I knew that would be. Well, I didn't know at the time, but I know looking back, that's my way to be able to give an olive branch or be able to connect. It's like, well, okay, you think because of what I've able to achieve with the sport makes us unrelatable. It's like, well, it's not true. There is. I probably didn't help that because I reinforced the divide because I didn't talk about problems. I didn't talk about setbacks. I think loads of people are surprised by how open I am. It's like, well, there's nothing that these that for me, it's not an emotional attachment to the event. That those are facts. Those are very logical. Be it failure with business, failure with schooling, failing with. I think the most easy is disability because I pretty much broke the leg very often. So it's like for me that's no big deal. It's like okay, like it's tiny, but if it gives people that little bit of morsel of bread to take that path to change, I'm happy. It's like okay, if it's gonna take me to be somewhat uncomfortable, I shared something before Christmas because I talked to my mum about it, and I went right back to the beginning and said, well, I know how it felt for me because I know no different. I'm probably more embracing of it most of the time because it gives a sense of accomplishment. Sometimes I'll brush it off. It's like, oh, okay, I don't know any different. But what I did was, okay, what was it like for the family for me growing up as a disability? And that was quite heartwarming because, like, okay, it was challenging for my mother. I've used this on my website. My grandmother was very doom and gloom, but I never knew this. She was like, well, how's he going to survive? Is he going to be in a wheelchair for the rest of his life? And all those kind of negative stereotypes. She wasn't ever like that around me growing up. So it's probably very much, old school thinking. Somebody that's grown up either side of both wars of pretty much British stereotypes. Step up a lip and we carry on. But what messages I got people like grown people in tears. Like, oh, I've just told you, I've learned about this 30 minutes ago. It's no big deal. It is pretty big for somebody else or a pill for somebody else to swallow because it's like, well, oh, how would I survive? It's like, well, I didn't. I was very rarely in a wheelchair. Okay, I've used it to kind of showcase, positivity of it because I play wheelchair sport. Okay, the other aspect of it was I was in a hospital wheelchair, which is horrific. It's a tank, but it's relatable to other amputees because it's viewed as stigmatized as this is bad. It's going backwards. I don't want to use crutches. I don't want to go in a wheelchair because I'm giving up and I'm becoming invalid and an invalid. But it's like, well, is it? If that's the best that you can do on that day that you utilize crutches, okay, I've got a loaner wheelchair in the house, but I've not used it. But the NHS kind of went to a point where they were running on fumes with one limb sensor I use because people are having to shield themselves and they couldn't function. It's like, okay, I can see why you give everybody an opportunity to have something just in case for whatever reason the mine didn't break, thank God. You're still able to go out and where I live. It makes it more difficult because it's quite hilly in North Wales. So having a tank to be able to get around would not be ideal. So I never kind of use that as it would be the last case scenario, but it would be I'd always kind of go, well, can I get away with just using my crutches, or can I get away with not using my? It's like I've still got a negative perception towards it, like any other amputee, because it's like, well, that's a massive step backwards. Whereas I think from a sporting perspective, because it's agile, it's sleek, it looks nice, it's not heavy. It's like, I don't know how to describe, a high end luxury car versus a piece like a, I don't know, Morris Minor, or we go way back. There's something that's hideous and you don't want to be anywhere near it. But that that in itself is stigma, and it comes down to mental perception. Is it a case of me looking at it? But if I was use it from a video clip I saw from Gary Vee, he kind of got asked somebody else, what kind of car do you drive? Answer was BMW. And this was an amazing question that he asked the guy in the audience says, do you like BMW, or do you like that what people perceive of you? Which is, I think, it is, you could probably blanket that over the wheelchair. You could blanket that over mental health as, is it really what you perceive of the disability or disablement, or is it what you think other people will think of you?
And I think that is true, because sometimes what helped me own up, like everyone who knows me knows, well, they might think I might wear glasses or something, but when I started owning up to it, and it's made my life a lot easier. That way, if I say where's the toilet, someone will show me. And I think sometimes you don't want other people. Empathy is great, but pity is dreadful, isn't it? And I think when someone is trying to understand to make a situation better, but as you said, like when I lost my eyes back in '87, I was 3. How many people must have said to my parents, "Oh, his life's over. Oh, all the things he's going to miss." And when you are disabled, yes, you do miss out on certain things, but there's so many things, if you're willing to try, that you can achieve. And that's why I think the Paralympics and all these things are so brilliant, because what is the difference from the Paralympics to the normal Olympics, apart from the perception of them?
Well, that's a great point, Kevin. It's perception, because what did I took the piss out of their motto a couple of weeks ago, as was it higher, faster, stronger together. I utilized to sell a product, because it's like, well, in terms of disability, you can't get better than that, because the epitome of togetherness as a community. It doesn't matter if you're blind, cerebral palsy, amputation, wheelchair user. The list is endless. It's one community. They take the piss out of each other, and I was horrified as how old I would have been, 14-year-old, maybe 15-year-old. I was like, we can't say that of visually impaired people being blinkies and throwing dwarfs. It's like, for me, because I'd been in an able-bodied community for so long, it's like, well, these are un-PC things to say. I think as I've got older and I've been involved in that little bubble, it's pretty obviously some of the things we can't say, because there'd be explicit kind of things to say to one another. But the point that I'm making is what you say, Kev, in terms of perception, is it's true, because for whatever reason, the Olympians are seen as superhuman. They're trying to diminish that now. It's like, well, it's technically true, because you're supposed to be the best of the best, the strongest, the fastest. What have I missed? It's true that aspect of togetherness is something you've added on because of COVID. It wouldn't be there if it wasn't for a pandemic, because the togetherness is not there. You've got people bending the rules. I'm not saying it doesn't happen in the Paralympics. It's just probably not as evident, because where there's a grey area, somebody's going to take advantage of it, no matter what. It doesn't matter if it's sport. It doesn't matter if it's business. If you've got a loophole, somebody's going to take advantage of it. But that's rightly so. And Channel 4 has changed the slogan, because that's what they used for London, was superhuman. I would technically agree that a disabled person has probably worked a lot harder than an Olympian to get to that point, because they've tested their own limiting beliefs, their perceptions of schooling, you name it. I probably faced some of those things of, okay, one of my teachers said you would amount to nothing, but that was nothing to do with sport or physical ability. I just happened to be not doing very well academically, and thus you're going to blanket me with, okay, because you're academically underachieving, you now become a failure. And I use that in sport. It's like, okay, when I was having low days, okay, this person said this to me as, I think about 13, 14. I utilized it for not 10 years solid, but if I was struggling to get any sort of motivation internally, it's like, oh, let me use this dark energy. This is what somebody has said negatively towards me. It's the easiest ones, these ones that come to mind. Let me utilize it in from a bad perspective to get a positive outcome for me. I can laugh and joke about that now, 20 years on. It's like it still hurts, but I don't believe the statement. It's like, okay, I got in with the wrong crowd. Academically, I probably didn't push myself as well as I probably could have. It helped that I changed schools, and then I thrived. And then I think after that, sport did very well, because people would say, well, okay, we don't view you as disabled. I had that perception of being different because I was the only one in my school. Everybody else, okay, people are going to look at me differently because of this. And I never actually asked anybody, do you view me in this way? I kind of had a light bulb moment. This is, I didn't have to wear a school uniform, it was one bonus. But I kind of went to myself, well, who is this impacting the most? You or them? And I think people are amazed by, it's not that big a deal because it's like a piece of clothing. It's not, I was such in a probably a good place because of sport, and I had confidence in that environment. It's like, okay, I have a problem with this has to change. If I had been in a negative place, probably a bit more difficult to change it, because it would be, okay, I have a problem with my disability. I perceive that other people see me as inferior, and then it becomes more difficult. But because of the support of family, I think I'm probably very, very extroverted when it came to sport. I was introverted and everything else. It helped to kind of reinforce that positive, and then pretty much I use music as long as I can remember, and that's pretty much brainwashing. Because if you look at it, if you were to listen to lyrics intently, no matter what genre it is, and I put aside the stuff that's sad and depressing, I'm talking about that actually have like a life lesson within it. That person is the easiest one for me to be able to use an example is Eminem. His life was a lot harder than mine. Thus, I think where you can relate to certain aspects of his life, it's like, okay, this is a struggle. He's very well known. He's very wealthy. However, he's faced a struggle. He's overcome it, and the words speak to people. And okay, I use hip hop and rap a lot more, but it's something that I can utilize 20 years on now. As okay, I'm having a bad day. Let me listen to this for however long, or be able to get myself into another state to be able to go from coaching to having a sales call to going on a podcast. Okay, the podcast is probably the easiest of them all, because it's depending on which side of the microphone I'm at. Be it if I'm the guest, it's a lot easier because it's my story. You take it where you want to as host, but I'm answering questions, so it's probably not that difficult. Versus probably being the host, I've got to think on my feet, but I enjoy it because I like where the conversation is going to go. Versus probably on the other spectrum, a sales call or a consultation, I'm trying to get the person to be either aware of the problem, go to places they never thought they would do, be very uncomfortable, and obviously that's very energy sapping. It's like complete opposite. And I think through music or any tool that's going to fill your cup back up, everybody needs to do, because you've got those people in your world or in your life that the toxic people I'm talking about, be it the energy sapping, is like they're very you don't really want to be around. But it could be family, it could be colleagues. It's like, I really don't want to be around you. You take all the you're kind of like a leech. It's like anytime I come around, you take it away. Okay, I've listened to some gurus and say they need to kind of cut those people off. I couldn't do it if it was family, because like, well, they're gonna be there. Okay, some people don't have that luxury, but for rightly or wrongly, those are gonna be people that stand by you the most when the rubber hits the green, when it gets hard. Those are generally people that are gonna be there in the dark times. Okay, you're gonna have some people who are friends, some people, it would kind of show where the true people are in your life, that they'll come to the rescue. But, and I've sidetracked off this a little bit, it comes back to it does come back to perception. It's I think the Paralympics kind of showcase the best of humanity, because it's like, okay, the person kind of got the proverbial middle finger up to life. I was like, okay, I've got, if we were to use Ellie Simmons as an example, dwarfism generally have a short period of life, a life expectancy, but she's made of her of what she's got. I had the fortune of, I've trained with her. I've trained alongside a lot of the British athletes growing up, and it gives me, I think this is probably going to be the easiest games to watch now that I've retired. I think it's very difficult to withdraw and to accept you're no longer in that bubble. Rio was very difficult. Tokyo was being, as a spectator, quite the Olympics was thoroughly enjoyable. It was okay. I did reminisce and kind of go, well, this many years ago you would have been in training camp. Okay, that's cool, well and good. That's nice. We'll accept the good of it. I know there was a lot of hard work and things like that. I don't miss that whatsoever. So I've got a smile on my face. Whereas you rewind 5 years ago, being able to see behind the scenes and being able to, it was very debilitating. It was, I won't say depressing. It wasn't serving me. It was making it worse. So I would probably needed support then, and I probably went even further back than that, to kind of go, well, you're not, things are not going your way. I was blaming other people for my mistakes and things. So just hear myself talk, those all depressive states that I'm talking about, but I wasn't aware as it was, and I probably did it quite a lot throughout sport as well. It would always be blaming other people. Okay, I haven't played today. It's us versus it's an us and I mentality. I wasn't involved. Thus, it's not my fault that we lose. Whereas I think now I would have a different tact about it, because I have impact on it in training. If I don't give 100% in training, it doesn't prepare the other person for competition.
Yeah.
Okay.
Fully agree with that.
Can I just go back to something you said there about basically haters and people hating on you and not being able to remove them from your life? Because we hear a lot, don't we, at the moment? You listen to any guru going, basically, and the first thing they say is, remove everyone out of your life who's not good for you. And that is not possible, because sometimes you don't even know they are that person. So I listened to someone the other day, and I can't remember who it is off the top of my head. And what he actually said is you need to reframe your own mind. So if someone is coming at you with hate, don't remove them from your life. Just turn them into a positive. Turn their downers into a positive. And you kind of said you've done that already with that teacher. So that teacher was telling you you're not good enough, you're not going to amount to everything. But that put fire in your basement. That gave you a positive. That made you rise up. That made you train. That made you get out the door and do it. So I think instead of having this blanket, remove everyone from your life who's not positive. Let's go. Actually, let's look at it and go. We'll reframe it and turn it into a positive.
Well, it goes a step further than that, Lee. It's even more impossible now because of social media. So they were talking about it with the Olympics with Adam Peaty of they've got the platform to be able to showcase the positives and their story. And okay, Simone Biles has come out with her having the what did she call it, twisties and mental block within routines. For some extent, I agree. I agree with what she did because it probably takes a figure like that with a multi-medalist to kind of go, okay, that it's a problem for everybody in society.
Excuse me, 2 seconds, Jamie. Can you hear that noise? Lee, can you hear it? Stop now. It was like a. No, it's gone. Sorry, Kate. I do want you to be saying all this good stuff, and then we couldn't hear it.
Okay.
From my headphones. Sorry, sir. Sorry.
It's all right. And what I was saying with Simone Biles with the mental health, it's good that she's come out and spoken about it. And I think one quote that was on the BBC website of what I could relate, is you're either 100% in or you're not. I'd probably, and I'm not afraid to say this, if it was that bad, why compete? Because I had the mindset of, and that's probably why I retired when I did, was I'd rather not turn up to the games than be off the boil. I don't want to have any regrets of coulda, shoulda, woulda. Okay, I would probably say it's probably a little bit more difficult to make a Paralympics to a certain extent because there's no guarantee that you'll be selected, even if you're on the cusp of being a medalist or not. It's very political at times whether or not somebody goes or not. There's somebody, I can't remember his name, just missed out, and it split the camp of should he go or shouldn't he? It's like, well, I think he's a 6-time Paralympian, so it's like, well, you've had a good run. It's unfortunate that it didn't end on your terms, but that is probably how it is within athletics, swimming, cycling. It's very cutthroat. You might be a medalist in the past, but if you're not performing now, it's no guarantee. And I appreciate, people's mental well-being. The British Olympians, I think, have underperformed, and they will hide a little bit when it comes to. We weren't able to train. We weren't able to train because of lockdown. It's like, well, that was pretty much the same for everybody around the globe. So, okay, maybe by Australia and New Zealand, that maybe got a little bit more of a handle on it because they're more isolated. But I don't think that's going to be some of those excuses are going to be used by the Paralympians. They'll kind of go, well, they make the best of what we've got. I think, I know for a fact, a lot of the elite athletes got dispensation and are able to exercise and ultimately train. It's not exercise, but train, whereas the regular folk in society were still stuck inside. It's like, you've got a luxury, you've not performed. It shows that I've been in that environment because I don't take these excuses very lightly, and I'm very unforgiving of the 4x1 comes second in the relay. The one who lost and got second place was distraught, and it was heard. I heard over the microphone, it's okay. It's like, it's not. You're supposed to be the best of the best. our relay is one of the best in the world. You shouldn't be losing to the Italians. I get that the Italians had a wonderful games when it came to the athletics, but we're in front. The Americans aren't in it, and the Jamaicans obviously are in a rebuilding phase. I can see why the guy is distraught, but from a mental perspective, that's going to haunt him because he bottled it in the real sense of it. But coming back to my point with Simone Biles and showcasing, the frailty of athletes, it's like, well, they're human beings, but it doesn't help that your motto is higher, faster, stronger, because you're supposed to be the best of the best. And I don't even remember what the Paralympic one is, but
I love the Paralympic one because there must be something wrong with you to compete in the Paralympics, and that's like a double entendre, isn't it? Saying you've got to have a disability, but there's got to be something wrong with you in the head. And I thought it was a brilliant slogan.
well, I think every athlete's something wrong with them.
That's what I mean. That's what I liked it, because it was that tongue in cheek, which the Paralympics does so well.
Oh, it's been okay with the disability. That's probably what
Yeah.
it is. It's been okay. I probably couldn't put my finger on why I wanted to physically do the things that I did. I think people still ask me to this day, well, why did you do it? It's like, well, because I wanted to. It comes down to choice. I have always been fairly active since I remember that I could walk. So for me, it's like, well, I want to do this, I want to do this, I want to do this. It's like a progression. I can appreciate that not everybody wants to be an Olympian or Paralympian. I get that. So one of the more recent clients, his mother was like, well, he doesn't want to be a Paralympian. He doesn't want to be viewed as because he's missing being a double amputee. Don't want to be perceived as that's all he can achieve. Very intellect to it, very well spoken. Wants to be viewed for another skill set. I use my sport as a vehicle. If you want to perceive me as okay, I would probably never signposted into that route because Paralympics was viewed differently when I was growing up. It's like, well, nobody turned around and said, James, are you going to be an Olympian? It's like, it probably, the perception never even crossed their mind as, okay, James is disabled, thus he's at I use that as an advantage. So in my swimming days, I took great delight in beating, the kids who had pushy parents. It's like, well, now you're going to get it both ways. You didn't swim very well, and you got beaten by a disabled person. Thus, for me it was kind of a chip on my shoulder, or an axe to grind. It enabled me to propel and succeed, because like, well, I shouldn't be beating you, but I am. Okay, the league was very poor, but that's a different story altogether. But if I thought that was better than somebody, it would be, okay, we're gonna kind of go, I'm gonna show you one. I did it. One of the last competitions I did before I came back to university. I came back to the UK to try and get selection for the Commonwealth Games back in 2006 in Melbourne. And when I went back to Belgium and on the base, people were like, "Oh, you're gonna be," and I deliberately did it, but a lot of people that knew the two swimmers were like, "Oh, you're gonna beat James." So I did it on purpose. Okay, yeah, let's fuel this so you have more and more pressure. I know I probably will beat you. I've got a little bit of self-doubt because you had beat me in the season, but I've trained all summer. You haven't. And I could kind of see this person crumble. I was like, I'm just gonna lump it on even more and kind of go, yeah, he should beat me, and I walked it. But in terms of what I'm referring to is, I've probably I've played that disability card to my advantage. I won't always do it, but in terms of, I like what you said, Kevin, of they're wrong in the head. They probably most of them are. They're very sadistical, very what's the other one? But it takes a special type of someone to willingly endure pain and be comfortable being in that environment and succeeding, because the mind is a very, very dark place, and it can be very troublesome at times, because, and even if we put mental health aside, it's not comfortable when it gets difficult. Most people quit. It's like it doesn't come down to physical capability. It's mental. It's whether or not you're willing to go. When you get to breaking point, do you persevere? So okay, I'm at one level, and I had somebody did question me. I know my physical capabilities. Like, yeah, that's not true. They had the same impairment as me. It's like, you don't. That's a ridiculous statement. If you'd have said something differently, of I know my mental capacity, and I don't want to go to a certain level, okay, that's fine. I guess that. But when you said physical capability, that's not true. I went to Paralympics, so I know that there's a level of to be able to push through, and I know there's probably multiple levels above that because I didn't medal. So I know deep down that from a position of probably perseverance and willpower, I get that some
I
people.
think, Jamie, though, like some people will settle for I can't do it, and I've lived my whole life thinking I might not be able to do it your way, but I'm going to find a way to do it by any nook or crook. And we had someone on the show on Thursday, Blind Dave, and he run the 7 marathons in 7 different countries over 7 days. And when he was telling us all the stuff that he's achieved, and that's why I love Paralympics and talk to people like yourself. But some people will settle for I can't do that. I've got bad eyes. I can't do that because I've got a bad leg. I can't do that because I've. And then the extraordinary people who go, I'm going to do it. I might fail. I probably will fail, but I'm going to give it my all anyway. Because people have always said you're confident, Kev, and I said no, I'm not confident, but I am brave. But give me courage over confidence any day. Because one's a mask that I wear and one's a sword that I'll use. And that's it. I think when people aren't happy with no, I can't.
Well, that comes down that I could go probably a step further, and this probably helps from coaching perspective. Is that's an environment that they've come from. Is their environment being supporting and nurturing? Mine has. So can't. Obviously, it's in the vocabulary, but it would be a case of, okay, I'd probably agree with what you said. Of okay, I can't do it your way. I'll find an alternative or an adaptable way of doing it. Okay, I did it as a kid of just playing on the monkey bars. I couldn't do it straight away, and I took myself away and sat from one side and observed, and then and this is probably, I got no recollection of it whatsoever, but through conversations with family, my mum said you could see the cogs turning. I'm figuring it out. I'm finding ways in which I could do it, and pretty much now that's something I could take for granted. I've got the upper body strength, and I eventually overcame it, and it does come back to that point of nurture and support of if you've got an unsupportive and unnatural environment, obviously that's going to come up a lot. I can't do this because I've not been given the opportunity. So that's me looking at it from a different perspective. But in terms of I can't, it came up on the news the other day of I think it was like an excerpt for BBC with the special needs school of said I can't look at might. It's like, to me that's the same thing. Can't is a negative, and might is a negative. Positive, it's still not positive. It's still not as positive it could be. Why can't the person be can't? It's perceived as they can't do this, but will or can. Will is a little bit more progressive than might. Of I'd probably use might and kind of go, okay, you still think I can't do it then, and go from that. Okay, special needs now is not the same education as it was in the 80s and the 70s. Of my basketball coach was in disability school. I was fortunate enough to go into mainstream education, so I don't know any different. Was things made any easier for me? Probably not. You hear stories of PE and disability not being very inclusive, or the teachers aren't very embracing of the kids with disability, and this is still happening in the 2000s. Thinking, well, okay, I wasn't subjected to it from a point of view of belittlement. I think to a certain extent, probably the disability was in that comment of you're not going to amount to anything. I think it's probably that. I think what helped me to gain parity and what's the word I want to use? Respect from the teachers. I beat him in a discipline. We did a swimming lesson. He challenged me to a race, and he let me pick the stroke. So I picked butterfly, which was probably my most dominant at the time. And I beat him, and it wasn't even close. So I gained his respect because it's like, well, I've embarrassed you, well, pretty much humiliated you in front of my peers. My peers took great delight in taking the piss, which obviously didn't like. But I gained a little bit of self-respect for myself because it's like, okay, you are good at this sport. Did I think I'd go to the heights of Paralympic? Probably not. I got to be a realist. Back then, it was kind of going from wanting to be a footballer or play basketball in mainstream. It's like, this is not going to happen because you've got a disability. But for whatever, and I'm not a religious person, for whatever reason, the planets seemed to align, and I was asked would I like to do disability sport. And it took maybe a couple of days to be able to swallow my pride and my ego, and I think family as well, and kind of go, well, let's run with this and see where the opportunity takes us. And I asked our head coach, and he knew somebody. I still speak to the coach that was my first swim coach in disability sport to this day, and that's 17 years ago. And still speak occasionally, and kind of go from there, and still touch base with people back in the day, and kind of going, well, that coach that said, would you ever do disability sport? I thanked his son for it. It's like, I don't know what your intentions were, be it malice or you were trying to be a philanthropist, but thank you, as you gave me the impetus to make a career, and pretty much I've made a second career because of it, because of the sport. Okay, I wasn't as successful as per se I potentially would have liked, because I wanted a gold medal or nothing, and that's pretty much the mantra of UK sport. Of it's medals are a premium, everything else is failure. It's kind of a do or die attitude. It's win at all costs. That's probably why this mental health aspect is coming into sport, because it's very business is in that cutthroat. Sport is kind of seen as wonderful. It's not wonderful for the people that have been in it, that's for sure, because you're just, once you're no longer useful, you're discarded. You're like garbage. It's like you're no longer viable. Okay, let's throw you on the scrap heap. I'm not saying for one instance that was the case with me. I walked away because I wanted to retire on my terms, and I probably refer to it now as exiting stage right with the curtain shut. I chose to leave when I did. I was resentful to other people that was getting plaudits when they retired and I wasn't. I think I'm a bigger person now because like, well, that was you chose to leave the stage. I think anybody that's seen a theatre production knows that they come back and get the round of applause. You didn't walk out. You decided not to go back on stage when that happened. That's on you, James. And that's probably now it's more of a vehicle to kind of showcase to people this is a setback that I had. This is something you can learn from that. Whatever you take from it. Okay, I can laugh about it now. I wasn't laughing about it 5 years ago. It was still a big deal. I was very bitter human being. I was interviewed a couple of months ago, and this person could hear it in my voice. As you're a quite angry person, James. It's like, okay, if you've picked up on that, I'll embrace it. I don't think I was. I've not listened back to it since, but they've kind of said you've come a long way since then. So I probably was. I was probably very bitter because it didn't end the way I wanted it to. It wasn't this magical moment of riding out on a white horse, but that's fantasy. That's never gonna happen for most of the people. It's in reality, life is cruel. It's unjust. It's unfair. I think having a disability, I can laugh and joke about it a little bit more sometimes because our use of what did I use? I was away back in the end of May at the mastermind with my fellow peers from coaching and our head coach, and I was approached on the beach by an old lady of, oh, it must be tough to walk on sand with crutches. And the other guys asked, "Do you get that a lot?" I was like, "Yeah, that's normal. It might not happen all the time, but for me, it's quite blasé. It's not. It's probably the same for you, Kevin. It happens probably more times than you can count. Now it's what are they gonna say? For me, it wasn't hurtful. It was a question. It was a statement. It's yes, it was more difficult than I thought it ever would be, but the sand is slightly different on the East Coast than it is with me being on the Irish Sea. I guess our sand is a bit more compact. But I use that as content because, like, well, who within the community has ever experienced that? I knew it was going to get traction because it's fact. It could be that's quite tame to something more severe. But I guess because when you have over your limbs or you don't have, like yourself, Lee, you have a child that's got a disability, that's normality. It's like it's unnormal to experience. Is that challenging for you? It's like, to me, that's normality.
This is what me and Liam we've been having, like, 'cause once again, mental health disability. But how many board members on these forums have either got a disability or they have lived with disability, as in the son, the husband? And I bet you've noticed this through your life. People come up with these ideas and thinking, where on earth have you pulled that from? Because that's not actually made anyone's life better. You've just pulled this idea out the air instead of talking to someone with eye problems, physical problems, wheelchairs. And like sometimes you go, oh, where's the disabled toilet? It's on the second floor. Well, have you got a lift? Or they've built these steps, and you think, oh, we've done that for the blind. You go, but where's the little yellow line on the front of the step? Or the thing that always makes me laugh about the blind mascot is Sooty. Is a yellow puppet that doesn't talk. How do you describe to a blind bloke what yellow is? He's the one puppet that didn't talk. And you
Well,
think,
I think
where are these ideas coming from?
I think it's coming from trying to do some good, but I think I echo what you said, Kevin. In terms of you don't communicate with the community you're trying to help, you don't really serve anything. So if you were trying to help the blind, you need to consult with visually impaired, the spectrum.
Yeah.
If it was to do with disability, it makes sense to have a disabled toilet on the ground floor. If it came to, but that's you could say that of anything. It's normally it's something that is not because other people that are going to be take advantage or utilize it and never normally not consulted. Or if we were to use BLM, Black Lives Matter, they generally said that government document was looking at institutional racism, didn't really look at it. But I think where I come from with being mixed race as well is, okay, this, you've got two children, and I'm going to take some flack from this a little bit, but I'm okay with that. Is you have two choices with that. You can be the victim or be the victor. I would take on, okay, I have a disability. I can use the card when I play, and probably very much more so now, because that's where we are in society. I think it's Britain bends over backwards a little bit, and I think society will bend over too much. It's like, well, are you going to grow a thicker skin a little bit? Some things are tongue-in-cheek. Some things are not as disrespectful as you interpret them. And, okay, I have the race card. But if you want to give me the power to be able to have an advantage over the two of you because of the colour of my skin, I'll utilize it, but I'll utilize it in the right way and like a positive way. If I've got something to say, it's going to be progressive, and it's going to be. I'm going to step up when somebody says, "Are you going to do something about it?" Okay, I'll put my hand up and I'll do something. Whereas opposed to, the news is very divisive anyway. But in terms of generally, when you listen to news, it's generally negative. It's like, well, how is this impacting you? And it's the victim. And okay, the person might not be aware of what they're saying as you're kind of spiraling in a negative way because you're depressed. Okay, not being able to be let out. Okay, the media come out with Freedom Day. I thought that was utter ridiculous. It's like nobody has been imprisoned in the house. Okay, it's probably more difficult for the likes of people in Birmingham and London and Manchester than people on the coast who've got access to a garden, who've got access to the seaside, and being able to have fresh air. It's like, yeah, I appreciate. Yeah, it's been more difficult for you, but you're not in a 6x6 cell, and you're not allowed out. So I know why the media have done it. It's to create divide, and to put it as, well, okay, one person's going to fall on one side of the tracks, and to put it at that. But, and if we go a step further than that, with popular culture, because my mum likes Love Island, that program shouldn't even be on the television, considering the impact it's had on mental health. Okay, not only as, I think it's 2 or 3 contestants killed themselves. The presenter did it as well because of the media being so volatile. I happened to have this door open, so I heard one of the episodes. It was pretty much, okay, they got counselling, but you're deliberately making people insecure, and they're already so. I talked to a fellow coach on my podcast about it because you brought it up. It's like, people perceive them as perfection when it comes to physical. It's like, well, let me stop you there. How many flaws do they have when it comes to other things? Insecurities, trouble with relationships. They pretty much act like children or teenagers, and they're in their 20s, if not older. This is not really. There's so many things wrong with the program that, okay, you were looking at whether or not you're going to axe it. It's like, it shouldn't be for debate. It's like 4 people have killed themselves because of the pressures of social media and the God-given right that somebody deems they have to be able to voice their opinion in no matter what consequence that gives. And okay, it's one thing for to come down on the social media accounts, but I was always brought up, if you haven't got anything good to say, you don't say it at all. So I always look at something as, okay, I might not agree with what is being said, but what I give to the conversation is adding to it, or subtracting. So if it's subtracting, I won't say anything, and I'll keep going about my day. If it needs addition, and I'm going to be able to supplement, and it actually helps somebody, I'll give my opinion. But through the evolution of Facebook, Instagram, Twitter is probably the most vile of the lot. TikTok's not far behind. People deem that because I have a platform to be able to express what I have to say, I'm going to say it. So one individual I know quite well, he got trolled and kind of went, I think the person said to him, what's the point of you? Nothing to do with disability. What's the point of you? And he obviously went back on his platform and kind of went, well, why are you following me? I would have probably gone in a different way. And I think it shows my progression because I would probably go in with both barrels a couple months ago as well and kind of go, well, what's the point of you? Because if you seem to come at me and you're following me, you need to look at yourself in the mirror. But I think where I've progressed is, through kindness. I kind of go, well, I'd probably question, well, if you need to come at me like that, what are you not willing to take on and challenge yourself? Because to come out, and so I think somebody reinforced it. It's like everyone talking about disability, but this is what's wrong with society. It's like you're willing to have all the power and entitlement, but you're not willing to take the consequences. So we're in a very dangerous place.
Don't you find that a lot with the world though? And it's I'm only having banter. I'm only having banter. And you go, no, you're being obnoxious and rude. I heard a lovely saying: say what you mean, but don't say it mean. And I thought how simple that is. And we've seen a lot with that, with the vaccines, the masks. And you're an idiot if you wear one. You're an idiot if you don't. You're an idiot. And thinking, that's your opinion. And I believe everyone can have an opinion. But please don't try and ram it down my throat. I've got my own cause and beliefs, and I won't slate you for thinking something. So please have the common courtesy to do the same back to us.
Well, it probably comes back to education. That is, it's been, well, communication is a lost art. It's slowly. Well, it's not dying, but it's evolving to become texting. Thus, I'm able to do it quite easily from a business perspective because I don't think it's communication. It's easy. I'm writing something down. There's no emotion involved most of the time, and it could be interpreted thousands of different ways. I had somebody the other day say I was being judgmental of them. It's like, no, I'm not. That's your perception of what I've wrote. I'm making light if you're not aware that you've laughed after something that I think is not funny. This was to do with weight. If you think I'm judging you, okay, that's fair enough. I wasn't. I'm just saying, when it comes to being a bigger person, it's not really something to laugh home about. And I appreciate that they did open up and say it's a defensive mechanism. That's something you seem to look at then, because me laughing at what you said, Kevin, is genuine laughter. I'm not laughing because I'm being defensive. I probably would do it if I felt uncomfortable with something. I might laugh, but I generally know. And but this comes back to debate. It's people are not willing to have it's probably like more political answers. Let me not blow myself up and try and masquerade around it. And I think if you stick to your morals, your principles, and your ethics, I'll be the first one to kind of go, okay, that's fine. If you don't want to change, that's on you. You need to take responsibility of that. It doesn't matter if it comes to weight, it comes to mental health, it comes to you being an obnoxious person or rude, or being humble and probably helpful. It comes to, it's as simple as that. If you don't want to change, or you're not ready to change, well, they're two different things. But if you're not ready to change right now, hey, that's fine. That's okay. Come back to me, or come back to the person that can help you, in due course. Don't wait, and if you don't want to change at all, hey, that's fine. You've not wasted my time. You've not wasted yours. It's if you're comfortable being in that cesspit, hey, that's fine on me. I'm gonna come back to where it's nice and rosy. If you want to be in that place, hey, who am I to judge?
And I find that a lot now, especially with social media, and because we've got Wikipedia, you can always find an argument that will back up your argument. And when you talk to people, they go, no, 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 no. Have you seen this? This confirms. I'm going, yeah, but that whatever we believe in, there's something to back us. And I feel that like gives people the fuel to really engage with an argument. And people, I like to think, I have an opinion. I can talk to you and I can go, blooming heck. I never saw it like that. Thank you. I've learned something new. But some people are that close minded that no, no, no. And my brother always says this. He goes, I already know what I think. The only way I can learn is by listening to what you have to say.
Well, that's it. Probably comes back to we go back to formal education.
Mm.
It's broken. It doesn't fit the purpose of the 21st century. It's Victorian. If we look to the British schooling system, it needs pretty much massive overhaul and updating, because most people, and this even me, even though I didn't have my formal education in the UK, I asked family, did I enjoy school? They're like, no. Okay. I thought I did most of it. Secondary school I didn't, but primary school I thought I enjoyed it for the majority. It's like, no, you were like everybody else. Okay. But where I think it needs changing is, I think from PE perspective, coming from health, expect PE to change and embrace numeracy and literacy. But the only subject that's embracing of health is science. Whereas you could put PE in every pretty much subject of the list is endless, because I can make the argument for all of them. But in terms of, maybe it needs completely changing from physical education to health, and then it's more embracing of every portion of society, because most people, if they're not sporty, hate PE because it's viewed as, coming back to the Olympic argument, the ones that do go on to do GCSE PE are sporty. Well, that's not right. Everybody should be educated to the importance of health and well-being, and pretty much, the knock-on effect of that is their mental well-being, and that's massive. That crosses literacy, because then you're able to understand the importance of it, why you're doing it. Obviously, numeracy is, we don't want people to be huge. Thus, you have an importance of, if I'm in a range that's healthy of me, it has a knock-on effect. It helps the NHS, and this probably comes back to what I was saying very early doors of, it's for the betterment of somebody else. It's not about me. It's about what I can do to help everybody. But this is education. It's so backdated. Okay, I left in 2019, so 2 years ago, and I had an argument with the teacher doing, what's it called? I call it home economics, but it's not. But
Food technology.
Yeah, food technology, and they're kind of saying, the food plate is good because that's what they need to do for their exams. Like, I'm not knocking that, because even when I did my qualifications as a personal trainer, our tutor said, this is the wrong answer, but to get the right mark, put this answer. So I get that the year 11s doing their GCSEs need to put something to pass. But the thing is so out of date. It's 30 years old, and what horrified me was, 16-year-olds not knowing how to use the oven, not knowing how to use the hob. Thinking these are skills that, okay, even myself, okay, I'm 35 now, but I went to university not knowing how to do it. My family did show me how to do it, but I was there but not present. It's like I'm watching, but I'm not taking on board the information. You have a subject that is, okay, I think we were probably similar age groups. It was perceived as the girls do that and the boys do technology, wood tech and things like that. That stereotype doesn't exist now because the schools have imposed it. It's like the boys, you'll learn sewing, knitting, cooking. You'll do that, and the girls will do vice versa. And obviously, you'll get exposure to both. But there's probably still that bit of sexism towards the boys as, okay, that's woman's work. It's like, well, no, because both my parents can cook. I can cook. It's a skill. Thus, if you can take care of yourself. I think the news doesn't help with this because it was come up with, I'm not going to pay £2 for tender stem broccoli. I kind of went to families that no. The argument goes deeper than that. The problem is not that the broccoli costs £2. It's because the convenience food is cheaper. The problem is so deep rooted as, why am I going to pay this much for healthy food? It's like, well, because one, you don't know what's in that product, or the bare minimum, because it's getting slightly better. There's not as much science on the back of packaging. You don't need to go to university to be able to understand what's in it. But most people, it comes down to, convenience, which is comfortable. It's like, if I can just whack something in the oven or in the microwave and then eat it, it's like, well, cooking can be, I won't say liberating, that's a bit too far, but in terms of it gives you enjoyment. I'm not saying all cooking is pleasant. It was brought up with one of my clients' mothers as he'd rather put some chicken nuggets in the oven and versus doing, they come from the Caribbean, so, preparing a chicken and marinating. It's like, well, the last process is still the same. The oven is doing the work, not you. So it just takes longer, but it's this aspect of effort. It's like, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to do the work, get the reward, or not do the effort? Okay, you get a reward, but it's not as satisfactory. Okay, the chemical response will be the same of the body. The body don't know the difference between what are called good and bad. Of if I was to do exercise, eat the proper healthy meal, and feel good for it, in the long run I feel a lot better. But that's I know that. Versus I don't exercise, I have a ready meal, the body gets the same response because of the sugar, the salt in the product. Thus, where you need to come to education is educating people on, well, companies are doing this on purpose, so you buy the product more. So if it has more salt in it, you're going to want to eat more. If it has more sugar in it, you become addicted to the product, thus you're going to buy it more. Versus if you did it yourself, I'm not saying chicken nuggets are bad. If you were to make it yourself, you know exactly how much salt you're putting in. You know, if you wouldn't. I don't know anybody in their right mind would put sugar in the product in something that's savoury. But you know exactly what you're putting in, the quantity, the amount, and you can add or subtract. You can put more salt in it because of taste. It's not salty enough, or you could put less in it because, this is a bit too salty.
Well, Jamie, my phone is just about to die. I think it is about to die. Can you still hear me?
Yep.
Yeah. So, thank you ever so much, brother, for coming on. I I always like to end on, have you got any quotes or sayings that have helped you get through life?
I'll use the ones on my podcast. An athlete's mindset is not down to physical stature or any material things. It's anybody can be an athlete, but I think the perception people have of the Olympics and being above themselves, it's like, okay, the person is willing to push the boundaries. I think everybody should want to push the boundary for themselves. It could be 1%, it could be 5%, it could be 10%, but you're pushing that closed-mindedness to be open. And I think when you're open to change, I think you're more embracing of everybody else to be able to accept things, and it gives you a greater understanding of you as an individual, and you can kind of always look to persevere even more. So I think that would be my quote.
And what is the name of your podcast and where can people find it?
My name of my podcast is The Mindset Athlete. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, Amazon, Audible, and anywhere that you listen to podcasts.
Brilliant. So, guys, I hope you've enjoyed it. So, until we see each other next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Ta-ra a bit.
Listen.
And that's a wrap for another show. But if there are any comments or messages that you would like us to read out for our next podcast, please be in touch. There are also lots of different organisations at the bottom of this page, and hopefully they can help you or someone you care about. Please share this to spread the word. Until we talk next time, ta-ra a bit.
Listen.